This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
EU urges countries to lift UK travel bans. South Africa battles new strain as it procures vaccines. And doctors and nurses in Kenya strike over poor working conditions. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. The details on those stories and others in just a moment. But first, here's Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Tunisia's tourism revenue has fallen by nearly two-thirds for the period ending on the 10th of December. And we'll take a look at the latest growth forecasts for Egypt over the next 24 months. Details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And our top story, the EU has recommended that the UK travel ban should end to avoid shortages because of supply chain disruptions. However, it is urging member states to discourage all non-essential travel to and from the UK amid a surge in mutant COVID-19 cases. Earlier, the European Commission had recommended that all 27 EU member states to impose travel bans to and from the United Kingdom over the highly infectious new coronavirus strain called B117, which was identified there. CGTN's Andrew Wilson has more from Oxford.
The government has three different battles to fight at the moment. One is domestic in terms of whether it should change the arrangements and pandemic laws concerning the spread of this new variant inside the country, because the European Union is now considering a united travel front decision over the next couple of days about what it advises member states to do regarding travel in and out of the United Kingdom. But the main priority at the moment is to clear this backlog of lorries that I'm sure everyone has seen now on the television pictures at the port of Dover, the main and closest link to the continent through the country of France. Now, the Prime Minister yesterday spoke to President Emmanuel Macron of France to talk to him about arrangements they might make to free up this logjam. There are now thought to be about 1,500 trucks stuck on this side of the channel, many of them European lorry drivers trying to take either empty loads or full loads back to their own countries in time to spend Christmas with their families. So there's elements of frustration in that as well. And they're talking about trying to rush in perhaps a testing program at the port or nearby to allow these lorries to move. The good news is, as far as vaccines are concerned, or at least the ones they're using to tackle COVID-19, is that they are very easily tweaked. It's quite easy to take the makeup of a particular vaccine, like the Pfizer vaccine or the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, and tweak it slightly to adjust to any new mutant strains or variants that might come down the line. But what's most important is the work of this organizer NervTag now to identify the specific characteristics of this new strain that they've confirmed working here in the southeast of England and perhaps spreading already across the country.
Meanwhile, U.S. lawmakers have approved a $900 billion relief bill. It's aimed at stimulating the pandemic-hit economy. The package includes direct payments to individuals, unemployment benefits and rental assistance. It also features support for schools, small businesses, as well as testing and vaccine distributions. U.S. President Donald Trump is set to sign the bill into law once he receives it. This comes as the total number of COVID-19 cases in America topped 18 million on Monday. Here's what some Americans are saying about the payments to individuals.
Not as much as we got last time, obviously, but you know, something's better than nothing. And I think the American public deserves a little bit better and a little bit.
I don't think that $600 given. The last check was $1,200, and the length of time between the two, $600 is very insignificant for the individuals trying to feed their families.
And data shows the economic downturn caused by the pandemic has made low-income families in the U.S. struggling for basic necessities like food and clothing, even during the holiday season.
As Christmas approaches, people wait in snaking lines of cars for free meals from food banks across the United States. At one center in North Texas, 3.4 million meals were handed out in 2 weeks around Thanksgiving, a record number according to volunteers. This festive season, because of the economic fallout from COVID-19, hunger has become an even bigger concern among low-income families in the U.S. In the last 8 months, food sufficiency in the U.S. has dropped from 88.6% to 76.3% among surveyed Americans. The wealthy may have the means to shelter from some of the worst effects of the pandemic. The poor have been sucked into the center of what is, in effect, an economic tornado. And among them, minorities are, once again, bearing the brunt of the suffering. From April to November, the number of Americans without enough to eat rose among all racial groups. The percentage of white people in this group remained the lowest at 18.9%, which is roughly 1 in 5. The number among blacks was 14.7 points higher, making it about 1 in 3 African Americans whose cupboards may be close to empty. When it comes to access to adequate amounts of affordable food, Hispanics have actually felt the biggest impact from the pandemic. Data shows that similar proportions of blacks and whites have fallen into hunger, by around 10 points each in the 8 months. Among Hispanics, the drop has been a huge 15.5 points. If securing enough food isn't enough of a burden for low-income Americans, then what about housing expenses? Many have indeed struggled to keep up rental payments, with the disparities again rather glaring. In April, 23.7% of black adults had trouble making rent. Even though businesses had been reopening and gradually rehiring people, by November, that number had risen to 30.6%. Among white and Hispanic populations, there was a less marked change. The number of people in these racial groups who struggled to pay rent ticked up by a modest 0.4 and 0.6 points, respectively. On April 10th, millions of people woke up to a new bank deposit of up to $1,200 as the first wave of stimulus checks were rolled out. For those whose lives were hanging by a thread, they could finally take a breath and pay off some bills. But as negotiations continue on further stimulus measures, more and more minorities are facing an increasing challenge to make ends meet. In November, nearly 70% of Black and Hispanic adults said covering their usual household expenses was proving to be difficult, of which more than 20% said it was very difficult. Financial hardship can lead to emotional distress. Those who live from paycheck to paycheck can be caught in a vicious cycle of despair. In July, according to Kaiser Family Foundation polling, 58% of people on lower incomes reported that negative feelings related to the pandemic have impacted their mental health. Nearly 7 in 10 Black adults and more than 5 in 10 Hispanics said they suffered major mental disruptions linked to financial stress. From food to shelter and mental health, the economic recession resulting from COVID-19 has taken an outsized toll on low-income minorities. As the pandemic persists and more fall into poverty, fewer minorities will be able to reach an adequate standard of living that everyone, regardless of race and ethnicity, has the right to.
Well, African countries are still trying to procure coronavirus vaccines, even as several countries in the developed world start rolling out inoculation campaigns. South Africa is leading the continent with close to 1 million COVID-19 cases and is now battling a new strain of the disease. A 90% recovery rate has been marred by over 24,000 deaths. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
A new strain of coronavirus has been detected in South Africa. It's spreading faster than the first among a younger and healthier population, and a vaccine is urgently needed.
South Africa has concluded all the necessary processes to ensure its participation in the World Health Organization COVID-19 Global Vaccine Access Facility. It is expected that South Africa will receive initial vaccines to cover about 10% of our population in the early part of next year.
It's important that a certain number in the population is immune to break transmission, because the virus spread on the basis of susceptibility. The more susceptible people we have in the population to the virus, then they will get infected.
South Africa needs $140 million to secure its first 6 million doses. Media reports claim it's missed the COVAX deadline. The philanthropic initiative, the Solidarity Fund, says it will soon make a partial $19.2 million payment on behalf of government.
The National Department of Health, they're in charge of signing the agreements with COVAX, and our Treasury, their role is to convince COVAX that they can pay for the vaccines when they do become available, because this 19.2 is just a down payment.
South Africa still has to iron out how the vaccine will be administered and who will get it. But for now, there's a hope that a small percentage of the population can be protected from COVID-19.
We'll probably take it to the healthcare workers. And the point there is that we're not really breaking transmission in the population, but we are protecting healthcare workers. The next batch that we get, we might target people who have risk factors, comorbidities, and they're older, is to make sure that we don't burden the healthcare system.
South Africa is spearheading the African Union Vaccine Acquisition Task Team to find direct suppliers for the continent.
This is looking at alternative financing mechanisms to secure additional vaccines for African countries beyond the COVAX facility. The Minister of Health is part of this task team and is also looking at innovative partnerships here in our country with the private sector.
The sooner African countries can build vaccine stocks, the quicker immunity can be built against the virus. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Ghana says it is in the process of acquiring COVID-19 vaccines. The country has signed up for the World Health Organization's COVAX program, which seeks to vaccinate poor and vulnerable people against the coronavirus. But some Ghanaians are uncertain they'll take the vaccine when it is made available. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
The WHO's COVAX program aims to supply 2 billion doses of the COVID-19 vaccines to low and middle-income countries by the end of next year. While some of the world's richest countries have reserved enough doses to immunize their own multiple times over, many low and middle-income nations may be able to vaccinate at most 20% of their populations in 2021. As Dr. Kwame Amponsa Achiano from the Ghana Health Service explains, that includes Ghana.
We have signed on to what we call the advanced market commitment, which involves about 92 countries and over. So that is where we are now. The earliest we can get a vaccine to come into the country for delivery will be, for service delivery will be around March, April.
The first tranche of doses through the COVAX program are expected to arrive during the first quarter of 2021. The WHO says those doses will be earmarked to protect health and social care workers. Vaccinating the rest of the population will come later. Not all Ghanaians say they will sign up to get vaccinated.
Because the education has not gone down well with us. So we have to be educated really well on the vaccine and the side effects it have on us for us to know that whether we take it or we won't take it.
I will go for the COVID-19 vaccine if it's brought into the country and will help stop the spread of the disease.
Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo says the safety of the vaccine is a major priority for the government.
I'm aware of the anxieties relating to the safety and efficacy of newly developed vaccines. Government will ensure that the COVID-19 vaccines to be deployed in the country are effective and are safe.
And as Ghana waits for the vaccines to become available, the government and health experts are making plans to raise awareness about them. They say the vaccines are just the first step to save lives. After that, people need to actually be inoculated. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
To Kenya now, where over 7,000 doctors on Monday joined nurses and clinical officers in a strike to demand better working conditions. The government says it is already addressing their demands, but as CGTN's Robert Nagila tells us, the public finds itself caught in the middle of the industrial action.
Grace Wairemo and her husband Daniel have just been turned away from a hospital in Kiambu County, about 20 kilometers from Nairobi. 9 months pregnant, her doctor had scheduled her for a cesarean section.
I was told to come today, but as soon as we arrived, we were informed no one is working.
Stephen Kimotho, another patient with an appointment, has also been turned away. A strike by doctors, nurses and clinical officers has shut down operations in public hospitals across the country, pushing the public health sector into a crisis.
My clinic appointment was today. I had an operation on my leg, but I have been told no doctor is working.
For Kimotho, seeking medical attention at a private facility is not an option.
To be honest, I don't have money for a private hospital. I'll just go home and wait.
This is the impact of the strike action. At the Kajiado Referral Hospital, almost 70 kilometers from Nairobi, empty hospital beds greet you in the wards. The isolation center used to treat COVID-19 patients lies empty. Walking around the hospital, it is clear the strike action by health workers is having a huge impact on the local community. This area would normally be full of people seeking treatment for various ailments. It's been like this for the last couple of weeks. The health workers are demanding adequate personal protective equipment, comprehensive medical cover and risk allowance before they can return to work. The government's urging striking health workers to return to work as a solution is sought or risk losing their jobs.
Do not be the one statistic again who will be a job seeker next year.
The Health Ministry maintains there are sufficient PPEs in all public health facilities and other concerns by striking health workers are being addressed. Bobot Nagila, CGTN, Kajiado, Kenya.
Well, the festive season is here with us again. However, due to COVID-19 related restrictions, this time it will not be business as usual for many hospitality sector players. But same hotels in Kenya are recording increased businesses, giving them renewed hope ahead of the new year. CGTN's Nick Mudimba reports.
The Sawela Lodge, an increasingly popular holiday destination in Naivasha, Kenya, where signs depicting the festive season welcome visitors upon arrival. It's clear that business here is slowly getting back to normal as more guests check in. The hotel's management has been pleasantly surprised by the increase in visitor numbers, but it insists that observing the Ministry of Health guidelines remains their top priority.
As we prepare for festive period, we have put in place measures which will actually safeguard all our guests staying with us against the COVID-19 pandemic. We have also been certified by public health, and I must say we are doing pretty well in terms of the measures we've put in place.
The expanded dining area captures the surge in the number of guests. The chefs are also busy preparing delicacies specially ordered.
Compared to other years, this year, from the time we reopened from the COVID-19, business has been booming for some time, and we've actually been operating at occupancy levels of more than 65%. So surprisingly as well, for the meeting rooms, they are all fully booked.
The rooms have to be well maintained to ensure they meet all the required health standards.
Before we reopened, we actually brought in staff members and did some training on the COVID, which was actually conducted by the Public Health Office based in Naivasha. They actually gave us guidelines. Everybody was trained and they know how to handle themselves during this pandemic.
2020 has been a difficult year for many Kenyans, and the festive season has actually offered an avenue to unwind. Hotels here are actually booked at 90% capacity, something that many didn't expect, but it's all about the mind, relaxing, hoping that 2021 will actually offer a good platform and a softer landing for so many who've seen the COVID-19 drought in 2020. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Naivasha, Kenya.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. China issues a white paper on transport development. And over 80 abducted children rescued from gunmen in Katsina in Nigeria.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
China's transportation has undergone massive changes over the past decade. Improved transport has driven the development of trade, tourism and the economy, and it's given people better access to jobs, services and education. On Tuesday, the government released a white paper on the sustainable development of transport in China, reviewing these achievements and looking to future development. Chao Bing reports.
China's transport systems are developing rapidly. A new government white paper says by the end of 2019, there were 139,000 kilometers of rail track. 35,000 kilometers of that were high-speed lines, 3.5 times the length of high-speed track in 2012. There were 5 million kilometers of highways, including 150,000 kilometers of expressways, the longest network in the world. And there were 238 certified civilian airports. But the government says speed didn't come at the expense of quality. It says China's transport development is innovative, green and open. And Vice Minister of Transport Liu Xiaoming says rural infrastructure has played a role in the campaign to eliminate extreme poverty.
China's 600 million rural population now enjoy easy and convenient access to better roads and bus services between villages and between urban and rural areas. Transport helps farmers emerge from poverty and supports modernization of agricultural and rural areas.
Liu Xiaoming says China's transport development has also featured a high level of openness to the outside world.
China's transport system has helped cooperation along the Belt and Road, and China has promoted reform of global transport governance. China shoulders its international responsibilities and upholds mutual benefit and is promoting a global community of shared future in transport.
In the future, China says it will strengthen its international transport cooperation to promote global connectivity and stronger people-to-people ties as its own contribution to a better world. Cao Bing, CGTN, Beijing.
The security situation in northern Nigeria appears to be worsening, with bandits increasingly targeting school children. 48 hours after the release of 344 schoolboys kidnapped by bandits from a boarding school in the northwest Katsina state, gunmen abducted about 80 others. The children were returning home after attending a religious ceremony. The school children were, however, rescued by security agents and local vigilantes. CGTN's Deji Badmos brings us the latest on that situation.
Allah has answered our prayers, Mr. President. These young men are here, and it is now our responsibility to make sure that it never happens again.
But it did happen again. Barely 24 hours after the Katsina state governor made that remark, after the release of the 344 Kankara schoolboys, the bandits struck again, this time kidnapping about 84 Islamic school students. Security forces backed by local vigilantes were, however, able to respond swiftly and rescued all the students after a gun battle with the bandits. That incident, so soon after the earlier abductions, has shocked many, and it appears schools are now becoming a target.
We need to implement the Safe School Declaration. We signed that declaration, but we are yet to implement it. So I think the whole of government, the state government, the federal government, should come together with the legislature and seek ways to implement that Safe School Declaration so that all the schools in the country would be safe for our pupils.
The Safe Schools Declaration seeks the commitment of countries to protect students, teachers, schools and universities from attacks during armed conflict. Nigeria signed up to the declaration last year. Despite that commitment, schools are still being attacked, especially in the north.
I run a consultancy and we keep a database of these incidences. Between 2014 and to date, over 1,400 schools have been either attacked, destroyed by these conflict actors in Nigeria. Then about 1,300 students and teachers have either been killed or disappeared as a result of this action. So we have enough reason to have concluded that our schools are vulnerable. They are soft targets and are being attacked by these groups. And that means we should have taken more action to protect our schools.
To deal with the unfolding situation, most of Nigeria's northern states have now shut down schools. It's a big blow to education programs in the affected region.
Mr. President has expressed great concern over the declining security situation in the country. He is extremely unhappy about what is happening, and he feels that even though the security agencies are doing their best is not good enough for him, and he wants an immediate reversal of the current trend, an immediate reversal of our misfortunes in all their dimensions.
President Muhammadu Buhari has come under increasing pressure lately to fire his security chiefs and appoint new ones over the worsening security situation. But he has so far resisted the pressure to do so, and instead pledged that the government will tackle the rising insecurity. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
A report by Plan International shows that gender-based violence is the most common violation of rights of young women and girls in the Middle East and Northern Africa. The findings indicate that 1 in 3 women in the region have experienced or are at risk of experiencing physical or sexual abuse in their lifetime. Yasser Hakim looks at how Egypt is trying to tackle this problem.
Gender inequality and discrimination against women have been long-standing problems in most countries in the region, and not just in Egypt. Cases of violence and abuse against females have become prevalent in many societies. In an effort to address this issue, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi dedicated 2017 as the year of the Egyptian woman.
Egypt is one of the first countries worldwide that has outlined a national strategy to empower women politically, economically, socially, and providing protection for her. Legislations pertaining to women have been developed. New laws have been adopted and older laws have been improved to guarantee full rights to women and equal opportunities in every sphere, also to guarantee protecting women from any form of violence.
Egypt now has its highest number of government female ministers, as well as the largest number of female MPs in its history. There are also female judges in the judiciary for the first time, and all stock exchange-listed companies and banks are obliged to have at least 1 female on their boards. More stringent punishments against female abusers have been adopted, while efforts continue to tackle loopholes in the laws. However, discrimination against women still exists in the community, especially in rural areas where the gender gap is the widest.
It basically starts from the family itself, from the household, to raise the awareness in the schools. Harassment and violence in Egypt is like mainly because of, we can call it, there is awareness due to the people perspective about it, and also because females are afraid to speak up about it. Females used to worry about mentioning such things even to their parents. In the past 2 years, you can even see it gradually and obviously decreasing, because women now are more empowered and women now have the right to speak up. They're feeling more confident to speak up about any harassment or any violence that is happening.
The country's 2030 national strategy identifies better education and health services as essential tools to empower women.
The government was working on giving the opportunities of leadership, the women to have its own small, medium enterprises, to have her position in economically and socially, and also the campaigns that the government has been keen on are doing a lot of changes. Raising the awareness and the campaigns are the most important thing to be done, and this have the fastest and the best effects.
Discrimination against women has been evident for decades, and in spite of the progress made in tackling the problem, experts believe it will take time to completely eradicate it from society. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The first direct commercial flight from Israel to Morocco took to the skies on Tuesday. It comes less than 2 weeks after the two countries announced they were establishing diplomatic relations. Morocco is one of 4 Arab states this year to normalize ties with Israel under a U.S. brokered deal. In return, the U.S. fulfilled a decades-old goal of Morocco by backing its contested sovereignty in Western Sahara. Morocco is home to North Africa's largest Jewish community. Well, let's now go to Rama Nyang for the latest business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Tunisia's tourism revenue has fallen by nearly 2/3 for the period ending in the middle of December. And we'll explore Egypt's forecast growth trajectory over the next 24 months when we return.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 48 hours of rain.
Let's start up north in Tunisia. Tourism sector earnings fell by 64% to $700 million by the 10th of December compared to the same period in 2019. Nonetheless, the accrued labor income edged up around 10.8% to about $2 billion. The cumulative external debt servicing for the country was down by nearly 15% to roughly $3 billion. Here's CGTN's Adnan Charchi with the latest data from Tunis.
Tunisia's vital tourism industry, which employs over 400,000 people and contributed to 16% of the country's GDP in 2019, is at a crossroads. In a bid to revive the ailing industry, the country's tourism and handicrafts minister Habib Ammar has declared that the government's priority is to work in the short term to protect it from collapsing and preserve the highest possible number of struggling tourism businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The challenge is to save the tourism sector amid the coronavirus crisis, which hit the whole world. We cannot resume the normal activity if the majority of businesses are permanently shut down. The health crisis will probably last for longer than we had expected. We must be resilient and cope with the crisis until we resume the activity gradually when the vaccine is made available in spring of next year.
The government has proposed to pay the employer's social security contribution in the fourth quarter of 2020 and the first 2 quarters of next year, provided that jobs are kept and wages are paid by the hotels. This involves the wages of workers laid off, both fully or partially.
We have a short and medium-term plan to support the tourism industry by providing direct financial aid to thousands of workers and tourism professionals. The long-term strategy is based on boosting domestic tourism throughout the country.
According to the Tunisian Hotel Federation, the tourism sector, which is a critical pillar of the national economy, has faced serious damage due to the first and the second wave of the pandemic, Experts assert that thousands of families will endure at least 2 years of uncertainty.
We have tried to keep jobs and to assume our social responsibility, but now it's impossible after a failed tourist season. We expect the loss of 27,000 people by the end of 2020 in the hospitality industry. The crisis will have repercussions on the budgets of families. 6 families out of 10 will plunge into poverty because the head of the family earns a living from the tourism industry, while the rest will face extreme poverty.
Tunisian authorities have decided to grant tourism businesses an extension of the deadline for filing corporate tax returns for the years 2019 and 2020 until the end of December 2021, with a rescheduling of payment from January 2022. The initiative aims to solve the immediate cash crunch until the resumption of normal activity.
Prime Minister Hisham Mishishi declared that the government will speed up the implementation of structural reforms in the tourism sector. A special committee will examine the structural problems, particularly the indebtedness, which is the result of several years of instability, as well as the COVID-19 crisis. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Still in North Africa, Egypt's economy is forecast to keep growing over the next 2 fiscal years. The latest forecasts estimate growth of anywhere between 2.8% and 4% in 2021 and anywhere between 5.5% and 6.5% the year after. From Cairo, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The International Monetary Fund has just delivered to Egypt the second batch of a $5.2 billion standby loan and said the North African country's economic performance has exceeded expectations. According to the Washington-based lender, Egypt recorded one of the highest growth rates in 2020 due to its diversified economy and successful implementation of reforms initiated 4 years ago.
It was a collective effort by the presidency, the government and parliament. In parliament, we passed legislations that allowed the government to move quickly and contain the effects of the coronavirus. We must also stress that the economic reforms of the last few years have been fundamental in creating a strong base for the economy to weather the storm, unlike other countries that witnessed huge economic and social setbacks.
High demand on Egyptian bonds, an 11% increase in foreign direct investments, and a record amount of remittances from people in the diaspora have made up for the losses in tourism and slowdown in industrial manufacturing. Going forward, Finance Minister Mohammed Maid expects growth to double over the next 2 fiscal years and touch 6%.
As you can see, projects are working at full speed everywhere in the country. The tourism and hotel sectors are slowly recovering, the aviation sector as well. Sectors that depend on trade and exports are also working. Then we have shops, restaurants, cinemas, theaters. All these will begin to operate at full capacity soon. Along with the strong petroleum and construction sectors, they will push growth rates between 5.5 to 6.5%.
But Maid has warned keeping a positive outlook is not an easy feat, considering the pandemic was still ravaging most parts of the world.
Dealing with the coronavirus is vital because the pandemic has had a big toll on us. It's essential that we continue on this path. We should not divert off the delicate policies we are implementing now. If we lose balance, then for example the budget deficit will become too big to handle. Debts will mushroom. Funds for projects will diminish. It will be a big problem. But as long as things continue as it is, we will be fine.
The government believes the next period is about building on this year's success, strengthening sectors damaged by the effects of the pandemic, and improving living conditions for Egyptians who suffered from the economic fallout caused by the novel coronavirus. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
On the other end of the continent, South Africa's economy is forecast to grow by just under 4% next year, after contracting at nearly twice that rate in 2020. That's according to a recent Reuters poll of economists. This, remember, does come after a strong third quarter performance. The economy did rebound rather strongly in that period as pandemic restrictions were relaxed and mining and manufacturing led a broad-based expansion. From Johannesburg, here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola.
The economy shrank due to government-induced COVID-19 related restrictions imposed since March. And it's been suggested that the economy would contract by 7.4% this year and take some time to fully recover to pre-2019 levels.
Because simply there's some things we don't know. We don't know if the second wave is going to impact the first quarter of next year, which would then result in very bad growth outcomes. But I think if everything works and we don't have a long lockdown, we end all these lockdown situations early in January, then I think 3.5% to 4% is very, very likely. And on the positive side, if things go really well for us and commodity prices keep and remain high and go a bit higher, we could even reach 5%, which would be amazing.
There's another silver lining brought about by the pandemic. The country normally runs a current account deficit. It's been in surplus for several months now because consumers haven't been spending as much as previously.
And that positiveness with our current account will impact on other things like the currency and probably on interest rates. And that is a very big positive for South Africa over the next year that I foresee.
The key data point being monitored is the broad unemployment rate, now pegged at 43% and likely to increase.
And the reason for this is that we have lost a lot of jobs, but we're still likely to lose a little bit more because as the help from the TERS and from other government initiatives fade, a lot of places will be laid bare.
The country's economy remains in dire straits, and it's going to take focus and commitment from all the players involved to get it back on track to at least pre-COVID conditions. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
One last story for you in this segment. Singapore has received its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines developed by Pfizer and BioNTech. It's the first Asian country to receive those shots after approving them for general use last week. Health officials say vaccination will be rolled out in about 2 weeks or so. The jabs will be given on a voluntary basis. They will be free for all Singaporean citizens. They're paying for them with the taxes after all, and long-term residents as well. But priority will be given to healthcare staff, frontline workers, the elderly and other vulnerable groups. And I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. In global business, we'll be looking at the prospects for South Africa's tourism industry. It's expected to take a bit of a hit as the government is tightening pandemic restrictions. The details on that and plenty more coming your way at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here in the program. Here's what's coming up. A Chinese film anima steals the show as curtains close at the Cairo International Film Festival.
The year 2020. It was a year like none before, shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa, seemingly spared the worst of it, still took a huge hit with unprecedented disruptions to healthcare, the social and economic order. Climate change also took its toll on Africa. Shifts in temperature affected food productivity and availability of water and the overall security of the African people. The continent saw major political changes too. Several countries held successful elections despite the pandemic, while others made strides towards lasting peace. This was 2020, a year unique in so many ways. CGTN will highlight some of the top stories we covered as the year unfolded.
Invasion in several parts of the country.
As the Cairo International Film Festival came to a conclusion, organizers highlighted one of the special films at the end of the event. The crew and cast of the Chinese film anima were given a red carpet welcome at the festival. And as CGTN's Adel Mahroui reports, many Egyptian film lovers showed up for the movie's special screening.
The Cairo International Film Festival rolled out the red carpet for a unique screening. It's the world premiere for a Chinese film called Anima. World premieres are not so common at the festival, so Anima was screened in the prestigious main hall of Cairo's Opera House.
We are very happy to have this chance to be part of this festival. From the pre-production to production to post-production and shooting, it took us 4 years to complete this film. We faced more difficulty during the COVID-19 pandemic, so we cherished this opportunity to have this chance to come here and introduce our film to the international audience.
When the coronavirus things happens, we are doing our post-production, so we are actually affected by that. And our editor, they are in a different place. One is in United States and one is in China. But we conquer all the challenges and we managed to put them together through the internet, and we finished the film. And yeah, we are very happy and we are very proud of ourselves.
Anima digs deep in the relation between man and nature through the life story of two siblings. One of them was forced to kill a bear to save his brother when they were kids. As they grow up, one follows the family's path of becoming a lumberjack, while the other realizes his family's abuse of nature. He stands up against their cutting of trees, in a drama that sees humans and animals clash in a fight to preserve nature.
It's beautiful. The framing of the shots and coloring is amazing. The storyline is also very touching. It's the first Chinese film I've ever watched. I honestly came by chance, but I loved the experience. The concept of the movie and how it emphasizes our relationship with nature is something that we need to think about.
We unfortunately don't get exposed to many Chinese films in Egypt. Chinese films highlight the beauty of the country. It makes me feel that I want to go to explore the culture there myself. We need to watch more of this film industry in our local channels.
Chinese films appear to have won over many members of the audience at the festival. Anima got the Audience Award and nominated for the Bronze Pyramid Award. Another Chinese film was also recognized this year. The Best Is Yet to Come won the Shadi Abdessalam Award, a title dedicated to distinguished directors.
The Chinese culture is cherished here in Egypt, so whenever there's an opportunity to screen a Chinese film, many try to seize that opportunity because it's an eye-opener experience to show the audience a world uncommonly seen in movies here. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. A Kenyan driver's passion for motorsport despite disability.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
The fighters, the givers, the protectors. The ones who patched us up to help us heal, and the ones who picked us up when we tumbled in the face of COVID-19. The African spirit stared the pandemic in the face. From north to south, east to west, warriors stepped up. And many of us are still here because they were there. We celebrate them in our special series, CGTN Pandemic Warriors.
He may have suffered a horrific motorsport accident 9 years ago, but Kenyan rally driver Nikhil Sashania did not let that ground